Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Professor Greg Dooley and the pundit Steve Clark. Men, take the mic.
The defending champs show off their rings in the spring game. The quarterback race may be far from being settled. With 10 new starters on offense, we'll help you get to know a few. Dusty May has a coaching staff and a roster, and the NFL draft is this week. This is the Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clark, and we're proudly presented by Nick Hopwood. He's a certified financial planner, founder, and president of Peak Wealth Management. Retire with confidence. Greg, as always, we highly recommend going to Nick's website at peakwm.com. Nice to see you.
Awesome to see you, man. The professor is wrapping up his winter term classes right now and getting ready for a summer of not teaching, so it should be good. A little nostalgic, Steve, saying goodbye to the students at the final exam. It's kind of a weird vibe, but also nice. Like, you get a lot of hugs and thank yous, and
they're hugging you for what a great job you did teaching them, informing them, and you're hugging them back because they gave you great pleasure during the fall and winter sports and spring season as well.
Most of them. But I'm also going to be on the west side of the state on May 14th, speaking to the U of M Club of Holland, and send out some reminders about that. We're going to be at the Makatawa Golf Club. It's the scholarship event for the U of M Club of Holland, and hopefully a few Professor and the Pundit fans will be there, or maybe some new ones that we'll make.
Holland, of course, is one of my favorite places to go out to eat. There is a particular restaurant over the Makatawa. It's called Boatworks. Food for all different types of appetites and taste. But the best part is people pull in to eat there on their boats.
Huh.
There is room for over 100 inside, and there's room for over 100 outside. Great drinks, great meals. You can go really fancy or you can go really cheap there. But the idea that somebody parks their boat out on the dock and walks straight in, amazing.
Okay.
Love it.
Well, they asked me if I want to come out, play golf, hang out for a bit. Steve, I think you just put me over the top. I want to check it out. So, May 14th, we got to talk about the spring game a little bit here. We both were there. I saw the pundit upstairs.
Pundits.
In the rarefied air of the press box. But the first thing I think I was looking for, and I think I mentioned this in the pod, probably like most fans, was who's replacing JJ? Are we going to figure some of that out? Are we going to get some clues? And the first person I was kind of hoping, because we haven't seen him throw much, was Orgy, right? And I got to say, I'm going to be a downer a couple times in this podcast. I was a little concerned, Steve. The passes that I saw, even the ones he connected, he wasn't the most accurate out there. Like, you just throw him behind the guy sometimes. And I was just hoping to see a little more out of the arm of Orgy. But there's much more. And you have some thoughts here. There were some exciting plays for sure. But that was the guy I was kind of hoping would separate himself. And I didn't see it out there.
We've been spoiled by J.J. McCarthy over the past few years. That's for sure. Alex Orgy's thrown one pass. Back in 2022, it was for 5 yards. Made multiple appearances last year. Always ran out of the Wildcat. So in his first drive, he threw a pass behind the receiver that was definitely under duress. But then he followed up with a 4th and 3 pass conversion to Brederson. And then on the very next play, he hit Peyton O'Leary in stride for a first down. Early in the fourth, he really overthrew a receiver to end a drive. Maybe in some situations, if that's like thrown in the middle of the field, that's picked off by a safety. But in his final possession, he threw 3 straight pass completions to start the drive. Overall, 13 of 18 for 103 yards. He ran the 2-minute drill at the end with his team down 2 scores. It just took 4.5 minutes to get down inside the 5-yard line. Probably should have had that score if it was attacked.
Did you hear Donovan after?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was great. And he's right. Like, the guy was reaching for him, and they let the QB run a few times when you had a guy reaching like that. It was a bad call. I don't know. What am I going to say?
I'll tell you what Jerome Moore said at the end of the first touchdown that he got. The 28-yarder was that Ernest Hausman backed up and didn't even bother to touch him at the 5.
Okay.
And they gave him a touchdown there.
Well, all right.
But if we're talking about someone separating themselves, Alex Orgy is nowhere at the near level of where J.J. McCarthy was, and you understood why Davis Warren was considered the best pure passer of the 4 guys, actually 5 guys, who are competing for the job.
So I did talk to a bit of an insider, someone who's seen the practice, at least the film, and that was the little scoop I got before when I asked that question about the quarterbacks. That was the first name that was brought up, said he's been the most consistent and accurate in practice. And Steve, you're not surprised. that about that feedback that I've got.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
you looked at it, you could see that he was hitting in stride. And then there were times where when he was scrambling, he was buying himself that extra tick and allowed to get his feet set and throw down the field. Ironically, the one touchdown pass to Frederick Moore, he threw off his back foot on that one. But that was an amazing teamwork type of play because the TD happened because not only was in stride, but Moore was able to run not only fast, but ran in a fashion so that his blockers could give him support. And in fact, Kendrick Bell, who scored on the long Davis Warren bomb from 42 yards out, he made 2 blocks on that play downfield that allowed Moore to score and make Warren look as good as he was.
That speed that you saw out of Moore, and I guess you could tell that on the telecast that I guess people were chirping as soon as he got the ball, like, watch this guy go. Great play. Probably the most exciting play, I guess so, of the spring game. A couple of bad angles on defense, but nonetheless, I think you're right. A lot of guys blocked downfield, and they got it done.
Kendrick Bell made 2 of those. And you got to give Frederick Moore credit for running in a fashion that allowed Kendrick Bell to make those blocks. You see it all the time where somebody, he should have cut left there. He should have stuttered delay here. That's backseat handicapping. But this one, there was none of that because he did exactly what he was needed to do, and that's kind of an underrated aspect of somebody's running in open space. I do see the dilemma, though, that the coaches have in picking QB1 for this. They're not going to make a public decision right now because, one, you don't want QB number 2 to transfer. But I think both those guys, both Davis Warren and both Alex Orji, believe that they can win the job right now just by being better than what they are. And that's a good thing to have. I don't think it's clear in the coach's mind either. As I said, Warren said to be the better pure passer, and everything on Saturday tells me that really isn't a fake conversation and certainly isn't a fake development based on the one practice that all of us were able to see on Friday. Orji obviously is going to need to improve on his throwing ability. If he can, his ability on design runs and when the pocket breaks down makes him an X factor like Jalen Milroe was for Alabama. No,
it's a good comparison.
Because Jalen Milroe really struggled in the passing game early on in the season. I mean, the loss to Texas showed that. How he got benched for Southern Florida showed that in the eyes of the coaching staff. And then they went back to Milroe, and Milroe improved as the season went on. And he's now one of the better, most feared dual threat guys in college football right now.
Yep.
What's interesting to me throughout all this as we kind of break down the quarterbacks is having a chance to meet Alex Orji for the first time afterwards. One, I'm just impressed with this guy as a dude. Just in general, the way he carries himself. Let's give a listen a little bit when he talks about on helping each other out when it comes to finding out some things.
Through spring, through this coming summer, and through fall camp, we're all helping each other to be the best quarterback possible. Like I was saying with the selfless pursuit of excellence, I'll be selfish if I learn something about a defense, learn something about our offense, and kept it to myself. Because then, if I end up not being the starter, then I'll be depriving our team of that knowledge, if that makes sense. So I think that everything that we get is, promoting each other to be the best one possible. We're each other's biggest hype men. And so I think that the biggest thing about this QB battle is that we all thrive off competition. But like I was saying earlier, when Dave threw that bomb, it's it's in the air, and I'm on the blue team, but I'm hoping it's caught because I love those guys, and I love to see offensive architecture. And that's something that Coach Campbell harped on us about a lot, is just knowing that it's maize versus blue, but really it's O versus D, and we always, we're on the offensive side. And then eventually when it's Michigan versus everybody, we know how that goes.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a guy, Steve, who's resigned to not be the starting quarterback. He's trying to do whatever, A, for his team, but B, that sounds like a guy who's trying to act the part to be the leader of this team, which is great.
And I think he's earned the respect of his teammates. I don't know if you noticed this watching the Fox telecast, but they were showing the ring ceremony coming out of a commercial break or something like that. And what I noticed was the camera was focused on Donovan Edwards opening his gift and the 4 rings that were in the box. But did anybody notice that the person sitting to Dono's left was J.J. McCarthy, and the person sitting on J.J.'s left was Blake Corum, and the person sitting to Blake Corum's left was Alex Orji?
No, I didn't see that.
So maybe they were assigned seats, and maybe I didn't see everybody that was sitting at that table. But I think having him a part of that table and a part of that group, whether that's assigned seats or not, or whether it's a free-for-all, everybody's jumping at a table.
Definitely not alphabetical, Steve. I can confirm that after I just did the little work here. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. But, in some of these situations when it's the new class, the new class is hanging out with the new class. There's Alex Orji hanging with and being supported with the guys who are not only be leading this team into the future, but the guys from Team 144 that are exiting. And we've heard great things about Davis Warren as well, about how he's handling himself as the number 2 guy battling for number 1. And I also thought it was kind of somewhat funny to the group, which I'm not sure everybody got, but Orji mentioned about hearing from Warren about how the quarterback room is so different now compared to it was when Warren first came. Warren's kind of like the elder statesman of the group and saying, it's a lot different now as a group than it was when it first came, which I assume...
Who was around back then?
I assume it was unwittingly aimed at Cade McNamara on that.
Jeez.
But as we wrap up part of our conversation here, Jaden Davis, we'd be talking a lot more about the super freshman if for something that was beyond his control. And the greatest play of the afternoon was the grab by Peyton O'Leary on the sideline on 4th and 3, going over the top of Jair Hill. It was said on the television broadcast, Charles Woodson says, he almost got mossed, Randy Moss style. But then Jair Hill, trained as a cornerback that he is, just never gave up on trying to slash that ball away. And Jair had his back, eyes away from the ball. He's just looking at his hands, and he takes a stab at it. O'Leary's got it over the top, so Hill misses it. But eventually, because of gravity, because of his foot hitting the ground, the ball starts to get a little bit lower. Hill takes another swipe at it, and he knocks it loose. And the reason why I bring this up, because not only was it a fantastic play by both players that resulted in an incompletion, but we'd be talking a little bit more about Jaden Davis if he had completed that pass on 4th and 3, because it was a perfect throw on the run outside of the pocket into the right place. The reason why we're not talking about it is because it was incomplete. That was beyond his control. If he had completed that pass, I think there would be a little bit more buzz about Jaden Davis.
I agree, and I thought we were going to talk about that because of the effort by O'Leary to go over the top. But you're right, it was a great play, and you're absolutely right. Nice job, pundit.
Pundits.
We would be talking about how he laid it. The only place really where he gave his receiver a shot, that was a pearl throw. Good stuff. But some other quarterbacks struggled out there, Steve.
Jaden Davis. And among 3 people, there's 2 Davises and there's 2 Jadens.
It sounds like my classes. There's lots of Dylans, Jadens. There's a few Jalen's. There's lots of Davises. Yes, go ahead.
So Jaden Denegal, I felt bad for him because, he didn't have his best performance out there. And the thing is, he was really improving from practices 5 through 14. Going into 15, the coaches said as such, his first 4 were really bad. That's not something you say too often, but piggyback by the fact that 5 through 15 was a whole heck of a lot better. But to see a tweet from Denegal that he decided to make public really tugged at the heartstrings for me just a little bit, saying he didn't sleep last night after the game. I can feel why. The practice in front of everybody. There's only 2 or 3 practices in a year where you feel like you can make an impact of where you are and your standing is on that team. And if it doesn't go right in a certain way, all the doubt starts creeping in. There are things you wish you could have done better, and you can get in this malaise. And so I felt bad seeing that tweet. I didn't sleep last night after the game. But instead of thinking about transferring, he wanted to point out that he wants to remember 2 quotes that he was given to him by coaches, that you're never as good as people credit you for being, and it's never as bad when it's the other way. And the point is, don't let your worst enemy be the space between your ears.
Yep. I do wonder if he took a few hits from people on social media. You have to assume, which is just the nature of the beast. But good for him. With the grateful hands, I love it. And then he says, absolutely no excuses, and now it's on. And he says, #leadership. I love it.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
So now you're rooting for the guy.
Yeah. He's taking his own advice, and he's also making it public, too.
Yep.
So, boy, it just kind of makes you kind of root for him down the road. I think, though, Greg, one of the more insightful things I can probably say about this quarterback race actually comes from a former OC, Al Borges, alluded this under the Michigan Insider. How the other position groups pass the standard of excellence can actually determine the quarterback. So, for example, if Michigan can't run the ball, it may be up to the quarterback who can pass the best. If the O-line can't pass protect, then the offense may depend on the quarterback who can improvise the best. So in a way, what Al is saying is one quarterback may be better than the other, but if the rest of the offense isn't up to par, it may not matter.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's a great point. It's a great point.
Wonderful insight.
No, it is. I actually caught up with Al briefly before the game, and he was kind of talking about spring games past. And he said, as an offensive coordinator guy, he said he always kind of cringed for it because he said in the spring, inevitably you're putting new stuff in. The defense doesn't have quite the runway typically with complicated schemes and things like that. They're usually ahead of the offense. So he always kind of gritted his teeth for the spring game. And it kind of fits with that. If it's not, it's more complex, the schemes, the plays, all that stuff. He was always worried that he wouldn't get to show what he could do. His team wouldn't be able to because the defense was ahead of him. So good stuff. Good stuff from Al.
Let's face it, though. It's really hard to be out there to evaluate one practice and make a determination of who you think is number 1 and 2. And let me tell you, just as an example, the O-line didn't have Josh Preby, who's a third-team All-Big Ten player out of Northwestern and may be the best lineman at Michigan going into 2024. Nor did they have Gio El-Hadi play at all. Orgy didn't have Miles Hinton or Greg Crippen, 2 other projected potential starters on his blue team. And in fact, Miles Hinton or Greg Crippen didn't even make an appearance until the second quarter. So Davis Warren only had Hinton and Crippen for essentially the fourth quarter. And they got 2 touchdown passes out of that. In Orgy's case, Orgy may have had one guy that could be on the starting 5 come this fall, being his offensive line in this practice situation. And he may not even be the starting tackle.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful about looking at something for the very first time and the only time and having our opinions based on that, because the offensive line that each of them had is not what they're going to have come August.
Absolutely. And frankly, other players who would have impacted the blocking, Loveland, okay, didn't play very much. What do we take from this? I don't know. And then, of course, we haven't mentioned Jack Tuttle, who is probably a guy in that conversation of possibly start because he played. He's
played a starter at Indiana.
Yeah, so he's nursing an injury, right? We didn't get to see anything of him, and we're trying to do the best he can to put together this roster at the QB. We didn't even see one of the guys who undoubtedly is going to compete for this position too.
Alex Orgy, 1 pass in the last 2 years. Jack Tuttle started games for the Indiana Hoosiers. Probably didn't have a great offensive line there either. I think the 2022 game was ample evidence of the multiple sacks that went on during that one. How about some other offensive surprises for you?
Xavier Dunlap. We've heard about this guy for a long time. Haven't seen much of him. Really, really, I thought nice, hard running. Showed he could break a tackle. Guy who stood out for me.
Yeah, I thought he looked great. He had a couple of big first down runs. He and Benjamin Hall, I think they're competing for the third running back spot.
He had a good game, too. Broke some tackles, right?
It's a big guy.
Yeah.
Benjamin Hall's a big guy.
Speaking of, we mentioned Dono already. I saw Dono because he came in my class and spoke to my class, but I didn't see him in pads. He looked a little bigger, Steve.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like he added on some bulk, man. He still
without a doubt.
His voice is still super low in that Dono voice, but he looks like a beast.
It's crazy how much they can look different in just a couple of months. I've been lifting again. It's 4 months. I haven't changed a whole lot.
Steve's been lifting. The pundit's been lifting. With Dono, though, he did seem to get taken down by one guy a few times where it looked like or tripped up last season. Maybe this will make the difference.
If his vision is good for 2024, he'll be one of the best running backs in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
I thought we'd see a little more of Samaj Morgan. I guess he only played a half. I was hoping we'd see a little more because that's my man, and he's exciting to watch.
He worked a lot on rushing the football. There weren't too many passes in the first half, and again, the way things were, the supposed QB1 and QB2 played the first and fourth quarters. And because of the clock error, the first quarter wound down very quickly.
Special teams, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm going to grade him out for you. Ready?
Okay.
I gave him a D+. I'm sorry. There were some really rough punts. There was a close field goal that was missed. We're not going to name names. Let's hope they get it sorted out.
Let's just say the kicker they had kicking those things have been kicking 50s all throughout high school. Conditions weren't great outside either.
No, they weren't. Speaking of what, can we talk about the conditions? Average temperature this time of year in the 60s. We're recording this right after the spring game. It feels like 70 outside. The forecast for Saturday was in the low 50s. The real feel ended up in the 30s, and the actual temperature was somewhere in the 40s. There were snowflakes in the morning. It was a little bit of a bummer, but whatever. I'm guessing maybe 15 to 20. I don't know if someone tried to report the actual attendance.
I would have guessed 15 to 20 on that one as well. One of the things I was excited about after Michigan winning the national championship was hearing quickly that the spring game would be moved to April. And I'm like, thank God, because I am done with these 30-degree temperatures, the moisture, the cold wind, and the lack of attendance. Here we are on April 20th, and I'm excited about a warm weather game, and we get the same March weather for all the other spring games that we've had over the last 10 to 15 years. I couldn't believe it.
Steve, people saw snowflakes in the morning around the area. Okay, it snowed up north. Brutal. But that said, I will say, like before I walked in, if I would have guessed, I would have thought a lot more because so many people were walking up. I was in the west side, up Main Street. It had a game-like feel. Everyone's wearing their gear. All the vendors were out selling national championship stuff. The M-Den was set up on the corner, right? It had that feel. Just when you went inside, I think a lot of people made the decision not to go. Now, I will say one thing that's nice about the spring game, no matter what it is. This is the opportunity for, obviously, diehard fans go. But this is the opportunity where people like take their kids because it's free. This is like people, like my graduate instructors who teach in the School of Education, like several of them went. They never go to games. They brought their kids. They brought their husband. They don't have a deep interest in football. But that's how they experience it. And I got to say, like in the 70s and 80s, Steve, you could get a ticket for a few bucks and your parents would drop you off and you could have a day for $5-10. And you really can't get that anymore. So the weather would have brought a lot more of those people in, but they get exposed to this, which, hey, we're losing a little bit. As Bacon says, the kids have been replaced with clients.
Yeah,
Steve,
that's the way it has been in the pros. I remember my first season ticket was 1985. I was 14 years old, and the ticket price was the same as my age.
Neither of us is 500 years old. That's about the price of the tickets now. So I think they're going up. Steve, I can't stand the Mays uniforms.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I know we've trotted out with them before. I remember the only guy that looked good in them was Cheeseman. Right, because they look very Green Bay Goldie cheesy.
It looks like a box of Kraft macaroni and cheese.
For some reason, Will Johnson looked great in it.
Well, I think Will Johnson probably looks good in anything.
He just looked cool.
Yeah.
I Will looks cool in anything.
I did like the CFP logo though on the back spine of the helmet. I hope they keep that symbol all year long if they're allowed to do it.
Well. Yeah, that's a good question. So what they typically do in the spring is they wear the helmets that they wore during the season, and that CFP logo was on the spine in Houston. So I assume they just kept it. Now, they've got all those stickers on it, but here's where I'm going. It's right about now where they typically sent the helmets out to be tested and reconditioned, tested to make sure there's no cracks in them, and they're certified, and reconditioned meaning repainted. I wonder if they're going to do that.
Greg, I have a solution for you.
Yeah.
If there's a crack in the helmet, just put a sticker on it.
Yeah, really good one. One of those big CFP logo ones will probably do the job. No doubt. I did see our friend Joe Simon in Joe's garage. Did you stop by to see
I did.
Yeah.
I apparently showed up right after you left. I was waiting outside for you to leave, and then I decided to come in.
Perfect.
No, that's not how it happened, but I did go in there. We had a fascinating discussion. It was like a summit meeting. Al Borges was there. Joe Simon was there. He was at the head of the table.
Yes.
Sam was there talking about college football's future. Everybody around was talking about the past, how we got here, what's going to be happening in the future. I wish we had a record button out there because it was like a summit meeting, and I felt like we should have this every 2 weeks and record it because it was absolutely great.
I'm jealous, man. We had some of those people, but not the full crew. So I'm glad you got to get that. I went down the street and saw some friends. But Steve, I feel like it's about time for us to go into the locker room. What do you think? And we can talk more about the spring game when we get out.
I need a break.
All right.
All right, that sound means it's halftime here on The Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clark. And Nick Hopwood has slipped into the studio to join us. And maybe Nick, if I ask nicely, he'll give us a little bit of a free advice. So seeing money markets jump up to over 5%, I know that if I put money in a CD, this is the rate that I'm going to get. But if I buy a bond, then I'm getting a pretty good yield at the moment, but that could change over time. Given the current conditions, Nick, would you advise people to get a CD or invest in the bond market?
From my point of view, if you need safe money, it's the money market. All the other money, I think, should be in bonds. And the reason why is because a CD, you do lock in the term, but for bonds, you basically get a much longer term at today's good rates. So most CDs, a 5-year, will be lower than the money markets right now, whereas the bond funds, depending on the level of risk, can be 6 and 7%. And that's good for 5 or 10 years. And that's a huge point that I'm trying to make with people. Because they're like, oh, we'll just go all money market. I'm like, no.
And we are in the fourth quarter of 2023, so if you want to get a hold of Nick and ask him any questions, or you just want to ask for a couple of ideas, go to peakwm.com. That's peakwm.com.
Thank you, Nick. 10-year anniversary. Nick supporting us this entire season. He's going to pick up his support for us as we get closer to the fall. Thank you so much, Nick. Check Nick out at peakwm.com. TV coverage, Steve. So obviously the Fox crew came. What did you think overall of the coverage?
It was a mirror of what they did for Ohio State the week before. It's a hype deal. I mean, Ohio State, you could hear how they're talking about. Urban Meyer said, this is the most talented team, not only in the country this year, but then dated it back 5, 6, 7 years into the past. So Urban Meyer, right up front in the first couple of minutes, says this team is the most talented team in the country, surpassing Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, all of that sort of stuff.
Great.
And you kept hearing again how great the defense is and how great the offense is going to be. It was an infomercial, and it was an infomercial for Michigan as well.
Okay.
You had Charles Woodson as your spokesman, and Charles would decide to come on TV or decide not to come on TV.
Sometimes they threw to him. Sometimes they threw to Charles and he wasn't there.
Jason Benetti did the play-by-play, so to speak, for both games.
Yeah, so he's good. So he's the new Detroit Tigers play-by-play guy. And it seems like he's been in the Tigers booth. If those of you who are baseball fans, you know there is a relationship with the people who call the baseball games, right, that you build over time. This guy, he took right over. And I got to say, I kind of felt a little bit of that vibe like he's been doing this a long time at Michigan State. So I thought he did a good job. Jake Butt, I thought, did a great job. Always looks good. Jake's a pretty man.
How do you think Jake Butt would look in an all-maize uniform?
Jake would look fine. Cheeseman, Will Johnson, Charles probably. I'll put Charles in that category. He did a good job, and I did like having Klatt on the field with his little cute comments, yes, but also he'd break down a throw or a block or something like that. I thought it was entertaining. Speaking of hype, Steve, they announced, of course, that Texas will be one of their big noon games, which I guess looking back is probably not a shock. Okay, this could have been the teams in the national championship game, playoff teams, SEC, Big Ten. What else is Fox going to do but put it on their big noon spot with all the resources they're going to throw at it?
They decided years ago that their primary game, the number one draft choice, will be at noon. And that's how they're going to do it. 2-hour pregame leading up into it. I generally don't complain because it put an end to Penn State night games hosting Michigan. I think that home field environment is real. Once it gets dark in Happy Valley, I think it means a lot to Michigan, too, playing it at home at night as well. Perfect weather for a night game in early September in Michigan Stadium. A bit of a lost opportunity, but if you liked it one way, you got to have it the other way. And so
You're
Texas
right.
is playing at noon.
So here's the deal. I wish it was a little later for this one. Normally, I like the noon game, okay? But if the weather's nice, you'll get a good morning of tailgating and all that stuff. Enjoy the game. And then hopefully Oscars or whatever afterward for the post game. So it should be good. Steve, I did do a game-like lap.
Really?
Yeah.
No surprise here.
Steve's joined me on some of these laps. You never know who you're going to see.
I feel like I go to Los Angeles, like I'm walking the red carpet with you, following you around in those laps.
It was pretty good. I ran into Ward Manuel. Ward not only spoke in my class, my history class this semester, he had one of the people who's really involved with kind of carving out the NIL strategy for the athletic department to speak in my NIL class. And it's off the record, but that was great. I saw the folks from Hail Impact, the charitable collective, and some of those guys. Oh, who did I see? He was late, probably because he was busy, Steve. I'm talking about new basketball coach Dusty May came in at some point in the late first quarter, maybe early second. It looked like he was with his family. Went over to Ono's suite.
He was on the field early on.
Okay, so maybe he went up after a little bit. Okay, I just figured he was super busy. Given all the headlines, it seems like he's been doing a little work, Steve. He's been at fraternity houses. And we talked about almost the laughable state or concerning state that the roster was in, that we need bodies, man. Well, enter Dusty May. Boy, we've got some bodies now.
I knew it was a little thin. As of like midweek, 3 roster spots filled and 2 maybes. And here's what's happened over the last few days. I'm speculating, Greg. I think these names have been released on a steady diet. I don't think these decisions are like, okay, you're going, I'm going. It's like, you two are going, I'm going. I don't think it's like that. But lots of news on the basketball front. For instance, the coaching staff is complete, and a lot of players making public their decisions to come to Michigan. First of all, Justin Pippen, a 4-star combo and the son of Chicago Bulls champion Scottie Pippen, has verbally committed to the Wolverines as a prep player. May also got a 7-footer in Yale transfer Danny Wolf.
And smart. I'm going to look for him on my class roster, Steve. I'm assuming he's smart. Went to Yale. Come on.
You might have to make him sit in the back row so that other people can see.
Great
Yale
point.
got into the round of 32 last month, and Wolf averaged 14 points and nearly 10 rebounds per game. That is a double-double category. There's not too many players in the NCAA that average a double-double. And again, got into the tournament, beat Auburn in the round of 32. Speaking of Auburn, on Sunday, Trey Donaldson, a point guard from Auburn, announced he's coming to Michigan, so he and Danny Wolf can trade barbs back and forth about what happened in March. You've got shooting guard Reuben Jones from North Texas coming off his best year. Jones is a 6'5" shooting guard, shot over 41% from 3 last year and averaging over 12 points per game for the Mean Green. On Monday, Michigan basketball is bringing in a guard from Ohio State, Roddy Gale. The 6'4" guard started 35 of 36 games last season for the Buckeyes, over 13 points per game, and shot 83% from the free throw line. We're not done. On Monday as well, 6'10" wingman Sam Walter announcing that he's going to Michigan after being at Alabama for 1 season. He played in all 37 games off the bench, averaging over 5 points per game. Meanwhile, earlier in the week, Will Cheddar, George Washington III decided that they're returning. Terrace Reed Jr. has decided to compete for the starting job at UConn.
I don't know if we have room for him anymore, Steve. Terrace might have had to go. What happened?
Terrace Reed Jr. is going to be competing for the starting job at UConn. That's incredible.
Wow, that is incredible.
It certainly looks like Dusty May is doing his job, Greg. Hopefully this will increase the donorship into the men's basketball program.
Steve, I heard he's making some traction in
would
NIL.
hope.
I've heard he's making some traction, and there was probably some of that traction on display here with getting all these guys. Steve, Sweet 16, Final Four. I think the bar is high right now. Wow. It's kind of what we needed to happen here is an overhaul.
They needed to fill the roster, and they're getting it. And what's surprising to me is that there's some quality guys there.
All right, so when they're in the Final Four, they will get rings.
They got a little more work.
They will get rings. They probably will not get 4 different rings, however, I would imagine, like the football team. So you already mentioned some of the guys get in their rings. In these little ornate boxes, 4 rings. I don't know. You can go out and see all the details on it, but there's one for the Big Ten Championship. There's one for the Rose Bowl. There's one for the CFP Championship and another one for good measure just for being national champions. Probably because 4 look better in the box. Geez Louise, Steve, that was something. And that must piss rival fans off a lot.
4 rings. Boy, that's kind of a recruiting tool. And I'm glad that they're able to do that. I think there was at one point some sort of admission about how many rings and what could the rings look like to pass NCAA standards. I have a feeling that is no longer into account because they went over the top. This is like LeBron James in Miami. Not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 rings. And the only thing I could say is that it probably means there's an increased chance of us getting one on eBay sometime in the future.
Okay. You mean one of the 4? I didn't like this one. Yeah. Did you have a favorite, Steve? Can I ask of the 4? Does anything jump out?
You know, the traditional Block M ring with the blue jewels is fantastic. Of course, I'm a huge fan of the Rose Bowl. And so any ring with the Rose Bowl ring on it. And then lastly, the national championship, the score inside the ring was bet on that one too. I mean, it seemed like it had
There are so many details.
It had a little bit of everything. Of course, Washington also had national champions written on it. The other national championship rings seemed to be a little bit redundant, but the Washington win had national champions on it. And as I said, with 4 rings, I think somebody's going to part. Someone's going to probably give one to their dad, their mom. One might hit eBay a little bit more often if it was just 1 ring. I checked the roster. There is no Dooley or Clark on the Michigan football roster for 2023. Not. I got to think that that could be available for people at a cost.
Someone already is creating, I don't know how they get this so quickly, but someone's already creating knockoffs. I assume they're from China that look like the rings. They even have a box, and of course the box was horrible. Sarah Hubbard, one of the regents, she's the chair of the regents. She already has the 1 ring in a necklace charm, so they went over the top. Now
she's got a ring around a necklace.
She's got it's almost as if the ring was shaved off where the gems are, so it lays flat. They've done that. Michigan's done that for years as a gift for your girlfriend, spouse, whatever, wives, coaches' wives, that kind of thing. It's awesome. So I did hear that some of the support staff, they're not getting the box of the 4 rings. They're getting like a ring that kind of symbolizes everything that happened. Like they're, one.
Inside the ring, instead of a score, maybe the number of hours they worked. Right. Instead of a stadium where they won, maybe they're shown holding a mop. Or holding a piece of tape,
a stapler, a cell phone,
files,
right,
thumb drives,
right. I don't know. Do you think Connor Stallions is going to get a box of these little beauties, Steve?
It would be one with an iPhone on it,
right? Okay, all right. So we don't know. There's other stuff, other celebrations, Steve. We at some point we should catch up on what our stuff that we have on our walls, but. Harbaugh got something a little closer than his walls. Harbaugh got a tattoo. I'm sure everyone's seen it by now.
Yeah.
Not of tattoos, it certainly wouldn't be the style that I would get. It was a skinny Block M. Listen, I'm not a tattoo artist.
His arm is not as thick as the players are.
No, it's not, but dude, it's not bad.
Oh,
he's got
I'm telling you what, he is much stronger now than he was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Ben Herbert's been after his butt.
Someone said, or Sharon hinted that he's been working with Herb, or he did.
No, you could tell.
Okay, so I think it's cool he got it. Okay, and I know people out there like, whatever. It's cool, it's 15-0. It's clearly about this season and this year. Did you hear what Harbaugh said, though, like right after he got it? He's like, I get why people, once you have a tattoo, you want more. He's like, now I want a rose on it, right? Right. So we'll see.
Is Harbaugh going to be unveiling a sleeve by the end of the Chargers rookie season?
We'll see. I do wonder, how that conversation went with the tattoo artist. Now,
you remember when you were with the Beatles?
The tattoo artist did not look like what you might picture from the movies as a tattooed art with a cigarette out of the, a big guy, or obviously a guy full of tattoos, or a woman, with blue hair and the thing. They probably picked this guy. as the least tattoo artist looking person from Central Casting for Harbaugh.
No, he was somebody else's like tattoo artist. I can't remember who it was.
One of the players. And someone asked, hey, joked, would Lloyd Carr do that? Of course, as the last coach who won a national championship. Steve, my answer is he still can. He still can. Lloyd's around. We can do this tonight, Lloyd. They are open late. I don't think that's Lloyd's bag, though. So there you go. Tattoo. He got the tattoo. What else? Our man Woodson was trotting around very much when he was on TV, Steve, and not off talking to people. He had some sort of WWE Michigan belt that he had. A lot of people liked it. Of course, Miz
liked it
from the radio station. I don't like it, Steve.
You don't like it? Why not?
Well, first of all, you're
no fun, Greg.
I am a historian, but that Michigan style M with the Michigan through it is from the 90s. I hate it. And who made this thing? They should have put the logo, the actual approved logo block M on the front of it. WWE. I like belts. I like the idea. I thought it was silly. However, I'm old. Pundit, you like it.
Pundits.
The players liked it. Miz loves it. Jamie Morris said on the radio that he loves it. So everyone loves it. They want more. They want more stuff. We got 4 rings. We got a championship belt. We got a tattoo.
It's 12 days of Christmas.
Steve.
4 golden rings.
Our walls are covered with all kinds of memories of this. I'm wearing a lanyard still from Houston. So let's talk about this, though, because there was one observation. I think I heard they were getting their rings. I didn't realize that all the players would be there at the same time, and it seems like almost all of them were there. Blake Corum was there. So that was a cool thing with Fox getting to talk to players. And they asked him what it felt like, and he said it feels weird. And he said it not weird to be in the big house, but weird not being a part of the team, weird not having pads on. And I get that. And I was reflecting on this, Steve, I was doing some deep reflection. And we've all heard of the stages of grief you go through. And one of the things that we marveled at is how the feeling in those early days really hadn't worn off of the national championship. And I do wonder if there are stages of this glee, of this joy we had, because I feel like there was that initial period of overjoy, but almost disbelief. And that's what I felt at first.
You were in denial.
Like it happened so fast, the Rose Bowl and the national championship. You're national champions. You didn't lose a game. Unbelievable, right? I felt like that lasted a bit. Then there was just this deep pride as I looked at my posters on my wall, as the confetti in my room, as I made unveiled references, I should say, in my classes of the national championship. There's just this deep pride. And like you said, Steve, you're having a bad day, had a bad conversation, something bugged you. Steve, something in the news bugged you. As soon as you remembered that we were national champs, it all went away.
Yeah, usually under days like that, it says, well, at least I'm not passing a kidney stone.
Right.
It's a great day. I'm not passing a kidney stone. Well, it's always a great day now because Michigan football are the defending national champs.
It is. When he said that, when Blake said that in the field, and I kind of thought about this game, and they started to use the term Team 145, which is the new team, I do feel like we've moved through a gate here or a phase. And I don't think there's any coincidence. And yeah.
We went through a gateway. The spring game forced it. The streak closed. The rings. There was, Jim Harbaugh making one last comeback and leaving words of wisdom as he departs back to L.A. No, we've turned the page. I don't like it. And we'd all like to hope that Michigan, during this offseason, gets the Caitlin Clark treatment that she has been getting, for the last 6 weeks. I mean, it's just nothing but positive. In commercials, always the focus. Everything is great. But honestly, it's just good to see that Jim Harbaugh suspensions or Connor Stalions' name not being linked or footnoted to every single story or mention that comes out. It's more about what the team accomplished. They did go 15-0. They had one of the best defenses that college football has seen. They did it with the running game. And finally, not hearing about looming, pending, all of that stuff that was surrounding every single story during the season itself in preparations for the CFP. Now that it's over, not being talked about.
Yeah.
No, we're not getting the Caitlin Clark treatment, but quite frankly, Georgia wasn't getting the Caitlin Clark treatment over the last 2 years, and neither was Alabama. There is a turning of the page by the people who watch football 48 hours after it's over, and it's talking about next year. And there isn't some sort of retrospect and tribute that must be paid going forward with every college football story. So Michigan fans, if you're disappointed by the lack of respect, that's pretty much even treatment for everybody.
Yeah, no doubt. We still have all the memories. We will still get, Steve, this week, a glimpse of a lot of those great players from that great team in action. And now I'm talking about the NFL draft, which I think we'll talk about quite a bit next time, because there should be many players that factor into it. JJ's been a big part of the story, as we know. Steve, can I get you to predict something? Where do you think, how many quarterbacks before him? Where do you think he's going to go? What are you thinking right now?
I think there might be 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round of this NFL draft. I'm no longer thinking that the top 4 draft picks will be quarterbacks. 1 through 4. That was at the pinnacle. The JJ hype was that he could actually be selected number 2 to the Washington Commanders. I'm not sure that's going to happen anymore. I think the Minnesota Vikings is the team that's most likely to draft J.J. McCarthy. It's how much they're willing to pay for it. So Minnesota, to trade up, is going to have to give up capital to get into the 4th. Maybe they'll think about, do I have to go all the way to 4? Maybe I can trade with the Giants at 6.
Okay.
Maybe I can trade with Atlanta at 8. Or the other thing that is a possibility, that Minnesota says, you know what, I don't have to give up anything and I can still get Bo Nix.
Okay. So you think 3 guys are probably going to be drafted before JJ. He's going to be the 4th, and it's a question of where he's going to go. I think there's a chance he slips in, he jumps one of those 3 guys. Not the first, not
Which
obviously.
one do you think?
I think it's a possibility he could jump Drake May.
I think that is the one guy that he could potentially jump.
Yeah, I don't think the Vikings will wait, and I do think they'll move up. It depends on how much they like you. So who's the other guy? Bo Nix?
Bo Nix.
You think, okay. I haven't had anyone have him that high. So you're thinking if they like him enough, they'll wait on him or possibly even trade down.
Exactly.
Okay, and get some draft capital.
Right.
This will be exciting. I think it'll be very interesting. The NFL draft is awesome. It'll be fun. We'll be watching, Steve. We haven't decided where yet. Champions Circle, I believe, has $1,000 event downtown at Campus Martius at a club where you can watch the draft with current members of the team downtown. So that sounds like a cool event. I don't think we're going to be invited yet.
Let's get that word out.
Yeah, someone, if you're listening to us and you're at that event, we need a live reporter from there.
10% goes to the Michigan basketball team.
That's right. What else, man?
Well, I think Blake Corum's going to be interesting about where he gets drafted and whether that is, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. I think the average is around the 3rd round where he might get drafted. I think the other intriguing thing is how many Michigan players not only get drafted, which could be an NFL record, but how many of them end up going to the LA Chargers late?
Yeah.
Or it would be more exciting if there's 4 guys who could go in the 2nd round: Chris Jenkins, Roman Wilson, Junior Colson, and Mike Sainristil could all go in the 2nd round. Is it possible that the Chargers might draft one of those players? Or would the Chargers draft any of the other Michigan players that will be day 3 picks on Saturday, rounds 4 through 7? That might give an indication to how much influence Jim Harbaugh has on the NFL draft process because he's not the general manager.
Last question, Steve. Is there a particular day you're looking most for? Because they just do the first round on Thursday in prime time.
Right.
Are you more the long game with the 2nd plus, what is it, 2nd through 4th round or 2nd and 3rd round? Which day are you most looking forward to?
It's day 1.
Okay.
It's day 1 because it's the most prominent players. It's because it's J.J. McCarthy. In previous years, it was always day 1 because of where the Lions were picking, and it was usually towards the beginning of the draft. The Lions this year are picking 29th. It's at the end of the night on Thursday. It's going to be after 11 p.m. So there's not that much interest from me in that one. But the J.J. McCarthy drama is absolutely huge. Day 2 is going to be fun because 4 players could be drafted, maybe even 5 if you throw Blake Corum in there.
Okay.
And then you have the plethora of Michigan players in day 3. So all of them are going to be good.
I agree. So the last thing on your JJ scenario.
I don't think Bo Nix leapfrogs J.J. McCarthy at all.
Okay.
It's just whether Minnesota, how much do they want to spend to get J.J. McCarthy, or could they acquire more capital going with Bo Nix? I think the Vikings are the team most likely to select him, and I think it will be in the top 10.
Okay. So here's my prediction. If the Vikings don't move up, I think somebody will make a trade to get JJ. In that first round.
Could be the Broncos, could be the Raiders.
See, I'm wondering if the Broncos would do that.
So the Broncos just acquired Zach Wilson from the New York Jets, but he's not going to be their number one starter.
Yeah.
That's not going to keep the Broncos from drafting J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, I think someone will come up and get him, and we'll see. But it'll be exciting. Next time, we will break down what we saw, what surprised us, and where everyone landed, and did Michigan break an NFL record for most players draft? Should be
Love
fun.
to see it. Greg, got to mention, at this time of the show last week, we did something that you thought might have been the kiss of death, talking about the Masters. We did get a review from one of our listeners. Listener Tom commented on the Masters commentary reminded him of something that was staged by the Michigan Whitecaps last year, where during a minor league game, they put the Masters music and did play-by-play in Masters style for what was going on in one of the innings. Yeah,
Dude,
you should look it up. Just basically Twitter, Comstock, Whitecaps, Masters. You'll get it. It's
So
2023.
the PA announcer did this?
No, the play-by-play TV announcer did it
okay.
with the color commentator. And the longer they went, the better it got.
Dude, that's brilliant. I love it.
It's about 2 minutes long.
Thank you, listener Tom, for that. That's awesome. No, I'll have to go check it out. I love it.
And, of course, Michigan football, the undefeated and undisputed national champions, Greg. Go Blue.
Go Blue.